In the grandeur of 15th century Poland, a prince was born, whose heart would not turn towards the glory of earthly kingdoms, but towards the pursuit of holiness. Casimir, son of King Casimir IV of Poland and Queen Elizabeth of Austria, came into the world on October 3rd, 1458, destined for a life that would transcend the splendor of the court. From childhood, Casimir showed a singular inclination for prayer and pious life, contrasting with the privileges and excesses that surrounded his position. His character was shaped under the guidance of teachers and advisors faithful to the Christian faith, including the notable John Długosz, who instilled in him a love for virtue and devotion to the Virgin Mary. As he grew, Casimir became increasingly admired for his modesty and detachment from riches. Although surrounded by luxury and conveniences, he chose an austere life, eschewing sumptuous attire and abstaining from worldly pleasures. His heart inclined more towards prayer than to the feasts and entertainments of the court. At the age of 13, he was called to assume an unexpected responsibility, leading an army to claim the throne of Hungary. Pressured by nobles and influenced by the politics of the kingdom, Casimir accepted the mission, but his conscience soon led him to reconsider. War and violence repulsed his devout soul. In the midst of the campaign, realizing that the venture was unjust and that his soldiers were demotivated, Casimir withdrew, refusing to seek the crown at the cost of bloodshed. This decision, although seen as a political failure, revealed the greatness of his character and his fidelity to Christian principles. His father, enraged by his refusal to continue the war, imposed a period of seclusion in the castle. However, for Casimir, isolation became a precious time to deepen his spiritual life, devoting himself to prayer, reading the scriptures, and meditating on the divine mysteries. After this period of trial, Casimir resumed his position at the court, but without being seduced by power games. He refused titles and honors, preferring to live in simplicity. His generosity to the poor and needy became legendary, and many sought him out for aid and comfort. Among his greatest devotions, he held a fervent love for the Blessed Virgin. He carried with him a Marian hymn, Omni Die Dic Mariae, which he recited constantly, finding in it strength and inspiration. His confidence in the intercession of the Mother of God was unwavering. The fame of his holiness spread throughout Poland and Lithuania. Nobles and peasants saw in him a different prince, someone whose authority was not based on power, but on kindness and the example of a Christian life. His presence radiated peace and hope. Even pressured by his father to marry a princess to strengthen political alliances, Casimir firmly refused. His heart already belonged to Christ, and he wished to remain chaste, offering his life as a sacrifice of love to God. His decision to remain celibate was not understood by many. However, he upheld his choice with courage, trusting that this renunciation would bring him even closer to God and free him to serve others without restrictions. Despite his youth, Casimir became a respected counselor, always guided by justice and charity. His wisdom and discernment surprised the elders, who saw in him a soul enlightened by divine grace. Over the years, his health began to deteriorate. Perhaps the excess of penances and fasts had weakened his body, but he never complained. On the contrary, he saw in his sufferings an opportunity to unite more deeply with the sufferings of Christ. Even when ill, he did not cease visiting the poor and sick. His heart burned with compassion for those who suffered, and he made it a point to bring them comfort, distributing his own garments and material goods to assist them. His dedication to charity and his total surrender to the will of God made him a living example of holiness. Many who knew him testified to his goodness and his profound inner peace, which seemed to emanate from his constant union with God. Tuberculosis, however, advanced relentlessly. At 25, Casimir felt that his earthly pilgrimage was nearing its end. Amidst pains, his soul remained serene, for he knew that his true kingdom was not of this world. On March 4th, 1484, in Grodno, now Belarus, Casimir surrendered his soul to God. His death was met with great sadness by the people, who deeply loved him, but also with the certainty that a true saint had departed. His body was transferred to Vilnius, Lithuania, where he was buried in the Cathedral of Saint Stanislaus. Soon, his tomb became a pilgrimage site, as countless miracles began to be reported by those who invoked his intercession. Devotion to Saint Casimir quickly grew, spreading throughout Poland, Lithuania, and beyond. The people recognized in him a model of virtue, a prince who had renounced earthly glories to conquer eternal glory. In 1521, just 37 years after his death, Pope Leo VI canonized Casimir, officially confirming what was already evident to so many faithful. His holiness shone like a beacon for the Church. Since then, Saint Casimir has become the patron saint of Lithuania and one of the most venerated saints in Eastern Europe. His life continues to inspire those who seek to serve God with humility and love. His example of chastity, detachment, and fidelity to Christian values remains relevant, especially in a world that often values power and wealth above virtue. In his iconography, Saint Casimir is often depicted with a lily, symbol of his purity, and with the cross, sign of his total surrender to Christ. He is frequently also shown with the Marian hymn in his hands, reminding us of his deep devotion to the Virgin Mary. The legacy of Saint Casimir resonates particularly among the youth, showing that it is possible to live out holiness even amidst life's responsibilities and challenges. His story reminds us that true greatness lies not in the glory of earthly kingdoms, but in the ceaseless pursuit of the kingdom of God. Even today, his feast is celebrated with fervor on March 4th, especially in Lithuania and Poland, where crowds gather to honor his memory and ask for his intercession. His testimony continues to illuminate the path for those who wish to live a life of authentic faith and unconditional love for God. The cult of Saint Casimir is not confined to Poland and Lithuania, but soon spread throughout Europe. His fame as a saint transcended borders, and many kings and nobles sought inspiration in his life to govern with justice and humility. Popular devotion grew as accounts of miracles associated with his intercession multiplied. Many faithful who visited his tomb in Vilnius claimed to have received healings, graces, and unexpected aid. In no time, Saint Casimir was regarded as one of the greatest saints of Eastern Europe, and his image began to be enshrined in various churches and chapels, especially in Lithuania, where he became the patron saint. In the 17th century, amidst wars and hardships that struck the region, the Lithuanian people turned even more to the protection of their patron saint. The name of Saint Casimir was invoked in times of crisis, and many attributed to him the preservation of the Catholic faith in the area. Devotion to Saint Casimir also expanded to America with the arrival of Polish and Lithuanian immigrants. In the United States, for example, several churches and parishes were dedicated to him, becoming centers of faith for the local Catholic communities. Among the most striking signs of his sainthood was the incorruptibility of his body. When his tomb was opened years after his death, his body was found intact, as a testimony to his purity and the divine grace that accompanied him. The news of this prodigy spread quickly, and more faithful began to visit his grave, carrying relics and asking for his intercession to achieve healings and blessings. The Church, recognizing the growing devotion, encouraged the celebration of his feast and the dissemination of his life as a model for the faithful. Various writings were produced about his story, extolling his virtues and his commitment to Christ. One of the most highlighted aspects of his life was his love for chastity. In an era when royalty often found themselves involved in political marriages, he renounced matrimony to live exclusively for God. This choice made him a singular example for the youth, especially those discerning their vocation. Many seminarians and religious turned to him as an intercessor, seeking the same firmness in faith that he demonstrated. Besides his purity, his charity was notable. Even having been born into an environment of wealth and power, Saint Casimir chose the poor as his true brothers and dedicated his life to serving them. He not only distributed alms, but also personally visited the needy, listened to their pains, and sought to alleviate their suffering with words of hope and concrete acts of love. His devotion to the Virgin Mary remained one of his most distinguishing features. The hymn he recited constantly, Omni die dic Mariae, became a symbol of his spirituality and his total trust in the Mother of God. This love for Our Lady was reflected in his life of prayer. He spent long hours before the Blessed Sacrament, meditating on the mysteries of faith and completely surrendering to the divine will. Many who lived with him testified to his inner peace and joy, even amidst trials. His unwavering faith was a sign that he was already living, in a way, in the presence of God. His zeal for justice also stood out. Although he avoided politics whenever possible, he did not refrain from advising his father and brothers on the importance of governing with equity and fear of God. For Saint Casimir, true authority should be exercised with humility and service. He saw power as a responsibility given by God to promote good, not for personal benefit. This sense of justice made him respected by all, including those who did not share his faith. His consistency in life was a living testimony of the gospel. During his short life, Saint Casimir faced internal and external challenges, but he never abandoned his trust in God. He knew that the path to holiness required renunciation and sacrifice, and he was willing to follow that path to the end. His love for the cross was evident. He accepted his illnesses and sufferings without complaint, offering everything as an act of love to Christ. This spirit of surrender made him a true imitator of Jesus. Among the many miracles attributed to his intercession, notable are healings of incurable diseases, protection in times of war, and conversions of hardened hearts. Devotion to Saint Casimir grew so much that his name began to be included in the litanies of the saints and in the liturgical prayers of various regions. His example was a beacon for the faithful seeking holiness. In sacred art, he is often portrayed with princely garments, but with a serene expression and eyes turned upward, indicating that his true royalty was in heaven. The Church celebrates his liturgical feast on March 4th, and this date is especially significant for Catholics in Lithuania and Poland, who organize processions, solemn masses, and acts of charity in his honor. Even today, Saint Casimir continues to be a model for all those who wish to live a life of holiness amidst the responsibilities of the world. His story reminds us that true greatness lies in fidelity to God. Devotion to Saint Casimir has spanned centuries, remaining vibrant among the faithful in Europe as well as among those who migrated to other continents. His testimony of holiness continues to inspire those who wish to follow Christ with purity and dedication. In the 18th and 19th centuries, during periods of political oppression in Lithuania and Poland, the people frequently turned to Saint Casimir as a symbol of spiritual resistance and unwavering faith. He was remembered as a holy prince who always placed God above earthly interests. The celebration of his feast became a moment of unity and renewal of faith. During the wars and invasions that marked the history of the region, the faithful invoked his name to ask for protection and perseverance. Over time, various religious orders adopted Saint Casimir as their patron, especially those dedicated to the education of youth. His example was seen as a perfect model for young people seeking to grow in holiness. In various places, schools and charity institutions were named after him as a way to remember his commitment to purity, justice, and charity. His life became an example for those who wished to live an authentic faith amidst the challenges of the world. In the 20th century, with the increase of the Lithuanian and Polish diaspora, devotion to Saint Casimir expanded to the United States, Canada, and Latin America. Churches dedicated to him appeared in various cities, and his feast began to be celebrated with great fervor. The city of Chicago in the United States became one of the most important centers of devotion to Saint Casimir outside of Europe. The parish of Saint Casimir was established to cater to the growing community of Catholic immigrants from Lithuania and Poland. Many faithful living far from their homelands found in Saint Casimir a spiritual link with their roots. He represented the faith inherited from their ancestors and the assurance that holiness can be lived at any time and place. During the communist regime that dominated Lithuania in the 20th century, devotion to Saint Casimir became an act of silent resistance. Even under persecution, the faithful continued to invoke his protection and keep his memory alive. The Cathedral of Vilnius, where his mortal remains rest, became a symbol of faith and perseverance. During the years of oppression, Lithuanian faithful gathered secretly to pray to Saint Casimir, asking for his intercession for the freedom of their people. After the fall of communism, devotion to Saint Casimir flourished anew, and his feast returned to being publicly celebrated with great solemnity. The Lithuanian people recognized him as a faithful intercessor who supported them in their most difficult moments. In 1984, Pope John Paul II solemnly celebrated the 500th anniversary of the death of Saint Casimir, highlighting his life as a model for the youth and for all those who wish to live holiness in the modern world. During his visit to Lithuania in 1993, John Paul II venerated the mortal remains of Saint Casimir in the Cathedral of Vilnius, reinforcing the importance of this saint for the history of the Catholic faith in the region. The pontiff emphasized the need to follow the example of Saint Casimir, especially in times of moral and spiritual challenges. He recalled that true greatness lies in fidelity to God and in service to others. The testimony of Saint Casimir continues to resonate, especially among the youth. He shows that it is possible to live a life of purity, prayer, and charity, even amidst the temptations and pressures of the world. Chastity, so valued by Saint Casimir, remains a challenge for many, but his life demonstrates that it is possible to remain faithful to God with courage and determination. His love for prayer teaches that true strength does not come from human power, but from intimacy with God. His life was a constant dialogue with the Lord, and that is what made him a saint so beloved and venerated. The simplicity of Saint Casimir is also a powerful teaching. Although he was a prince, he chose to live humbly, reminding everyone that true royalty lies in service to God and to brothers and sisters. Devotion to Our Lady, a hallmark of his spirituality, continues to inspire the faithful to turn to the Mother of God in all moments of life. He teaches us that those who place themselves under Mary's protection will never be alone. In times of materialism and spiritual indifference, Saint Casimir emerges as a model of detachment and love for God. His life invites us to seek heavenly treasures instead of the passing riches of this world. The processions in his honor, especially in Lithuania and Poland, continue to gather thousands of faithful each year. These celebrations are moments of faith renewal and commitment to Christian values. The youth who participate in these feasts are encouraged to follow the example of Saint Casimir, living purity, prayer and service to others as he did in his short but intense life. The iconography of Saint Casimir remains vibrant in churches and chapels dedicated to him. His images portray him as a holy prince, holding a lily and a cross, symbols of his purity and total commitment to Christ. His writings and prayers, preserved over the centuries, still today are a source of inspiration for those who wish to grow in spiritual life. Many people find strength in his words and in the testimony of his faith. The central message of Saint Casimir's life is clear. Holiness does not depend on social position or external circumstances, but on total surrender to God and living out the gospel day by day. The holiness of Saint Casimir is a luminous testimony that it is possible to live faith radically, even in a society oriented towards power and wealth. His example continues to resonate through the centuries, showing that the true value of life lies in union with God. His name is remembered in many liturgies around the world, especially in countries with a strong Catholic tradition. Priests and bishops often cite his story as inspiration for those who wish to follow a path of righteousness and service to God. Today, Saint Casimir is often invoked as the patron of the youth, especially those who struggle to remain faithful to the faith in a world full of distractions and moral challenges. His example teaches that it is possible to live purity and holiness without compromising Christian values. His devotion to the Virgin Mary continues to inspire faithful of all ages. Many learn from him the importance of praying daily to the Mother of God and trusting in her intercession, especially in difficult moments. Over the centuries, numerous miracles have been attributed to his intercession. Many faithful have testified to unexpected healings, deliverances from dangers, and profound conversions after turning to him in prayer. The Cathedral of Vilnius, where his mortal remains lie, is one of the main pilgrimage sites in Lithuania. Each year, thousands of devotees visit his tomb, seeking graces and strength to live a life closer to God. During World War II, many people turned to Saint Casimir for protection against the horrors of the conflict. His name was invoked by those suffering persecutions and by those struggling to maintain faith in times of uncertainty. His love for the poor and sick is an example for Christians today, especially those working in missions and social projects. He teaches us that charity should be lived not just as a duty, but as an expression of love for Christ. The spirituality of Saint Casimir stands out for its simplicity. Even though he was a prince, he chose to live humbly, refusing to enjoy the privileges of royalty, to be closer to those in need. This detachment from riches and power is an essential teaching for modern times, where so many people are led to seek happiness in material things. Saint Casimir reminds us that true joy comes from God. Devotion to him remains alive in Catholic families, especially among descendants of Poles and Lithuanians scattered around the world. Many families teach their children the importance of emulating his faith and his devotion to the Virgin Mary. Besides being the patron of Lithuania, Saint Casimir is also a special protector of young people seeking to discern their vocation. Seminarians and religious often turn to him asking for light to follow God's call. His example of chastity is particularly significant for those who wish to live purity in a world where this virtue is often devalued. He teaches us that chastity is a form of total surrender to God. Writings about his life emphasize his love for prayer and service to others. He spent hours before the Blessed Sacrament, meditating on the mysteries of faith and strengthening his soul for spiritual battles. Saint Casimir is also remembered for his patience and gentleness. He never returned evil for evil and always sought to reconcile conflicts with Christian wisdom and love. His short life of 25 years shows that holiness does not depend on the amount of time we spend on earth, but on the intensity with which we live for God. In just a few years, he achieved a high degree of holiness. Today, many parishes and schools around the world bear his name, perpetuating his memory and his legacy of faith. These institutions aim to teach new generations the values he so cherished: prayer, purity, and charity. Devotion to Saint Casimir is also reflected in various images and icons that depict him holding a lily and a cross, symbols of his purity and his commitment to Christ. These icons are spread across churches worldwide. In times of moral and spiritual crisis, the life of Saint Casimir is a reminder that it is possible to remain faithful to God even amidst temptations and challenges. He teaches us that true greatness lies in humility and love. His testimony invites us to reflect on our own lives and to ask, are we seeking holiness with the same fervor that he did? Are we willing to renounce what keeps us away from God to follow him more closely? Saint Casimir's intercession is often sought by those who wish to strengthen their faith and grow in intimacy with God. Many people report feeling his protective presence in moments of distress. His example is a call to the youth to embrace faith without fear and without reservations. He shows us that it is possible to be holy even while living in the world, as long as we place God first. Saint Casimir did not seek earthly honors, but was exalted by God. Today, he shines as a model of holiness for all who wish to live the gospel authentically. His name remains engraved in the history of the Church, not because of his political achievements, but because of his life of total surrender to Christ. He teaches us that true triumph is not in power, but in holiness. May his testimony continue to inspire generations to seek God with all their hearts, living with faith, humility, and love. Saint Casimir, pray for us.